In the year 2019, the world experienced extreme weather changes that resulted in the South Pole ice caps suddenly melting, where other impacts of this anomaly also caused heat waves, droughts, floods, and severe tornadoes in various parts of the world, simultaneously becoming a sustainable global crisis. Until several years later, scientists from 17 countries succeeded in creating a sophisticated space station named Dutch Boy, looking like a giant spiderweb covering the Earth's atmosphere. Thousands of Dutch Boy satellites would shoot clouds with hundreds of missiles every time nature showed a strange anomaly to neutralize the basic weather, such as heat storms, pressure, and tidal waters.
With a net of thousands of satellites by the International Space Station.
Since that day, humanity no longer worried about things called tsunamis, earthquakes, tornadoes, or all kinds of other natural disasters. Where a genius named Jake, alias the main director as well as the brain behind the creation of Dutch Boy, was invited to a UN meeting regarding the patent rights of his station's ownership. For the time being, full control over the Dutch Boy station is held by the President of the United States, with Jack as its main director. However, the senator, who saw this as a money field, urged the president to hand it over to an international oversight committee, not only disadvantaging one party, namely America. The senator also fired Jake unilaterally and appointed Max, alias his own younger brother, as the new director, replacing Jake's position at that time.
Yes.
For a moment we will be taken to Afghanistan when the military is shocked by a strange phenomenon where a snowstorm freezes an entire city located in the middle of the desert. It is still unknown when it happened and whether this has anything to do with Dutch Boy, but the military didn't find a single citizen who managed to survive. Not only befalling Afghanistan, this strange anomaly also occurred in Hong Kong when the Earth suddenly experienced an extreme temperature rise. Even one of the scientists who was shopping found his chicken eggs that fell instantly cooked on the asphalt road, eventually scorching almost the entire region. Curious about the phenomenon just now, the scientist immediately opened his computer to check his satellite data, but that seemed useless because access to his Dutch Boy satellite had already been blocked. Suspicious that the anomaly happening wasn't a pure natural disaster, he asked Max to check his account, which turned out to be blocked as well. So the scientist invited Max to have a meeting as soon as possible. Accompanied by Sarah, his girlfriend, who is the president's personal bodyguard, they look like they are already waiting at the usual place Max holds meetings. However, an unexpected thing happened when a stranger suddenly pushed the scientist until he was hit by a car. In the moments of his death throes, he managed to say something about a project named Zeus, before finally dying due to blood loss. With the fact that America only has 2 weeks left until access is handed over to the UN, Mr. President assigned Max to immediately fix Dutch Boy and asked all parties to keep their mouths shut first, where a council member named Decom recommended Jake to handle this problem.
So find me that someone.
Yes, sir.
Now.
Long story short, Max arrived at Jake's residence and immediately told all the irregularities that he and the scientist had found. Initially, Jake refused to help because he still felt hurt after the trial that had destroyed his career. However, because this was a request from his younger brother, finally Jake agreed and put aside his ego. Upon arriving at the Dutch Boy station, there was Ute, the leader who welcomed his arrival warmly. Jake was also introduced to several new crew members, among whom were Duncan, the operating systems expert, Hernandez, a specialist in the robotics section, and lastly, there was Doucette, who served in the security field.
Feel free to join me.
As an initial step, Jake asked the operator to pull the Afghanistan and Hong Kong satellites so he could check the data directly. An unexpected thing happened when the machine carrying the satellite suddenly experienced a malfunction and destroyed all the satellites it was carrying. Because the satellite was shattered into pieces, they inevitably had to collect every piece of the satellite to find its hard disk data. However, because all components were already charred, Duncan explained that it felt impossible to know the cause of the damage. Luckily, Doucette found one panel that was still intact, stuck outside due to the explosion earlier, so Jake and Ute would go to retrieve the panel containing the hard disk. Ute was thrown off because her astronaut suit thruster suddenly malfunctioned. Luckily, she was still safe after hooking herself onto one of the ship's pipes. Although the panel was destroyed during the tragedy just now, apparently Jake managed to retrieve the hard disk on time and asked Ute to keep this a secret from anyone.
I grabbed it when I freed the panel.
With the fact that someone is trying to finish off the two of them, Jake asked Ute to conduct an independent investigation without asking for help from others, because the perpetrator who had sabotaged Dutch Boy could be anyone inside this station.
You've been locked out.
And sure enough, after this hard disk was checked, they found a virus that had blocked all entry access. The Dutch Boy crew realized that planting a virus could only be done manually at the main headquarters. Jake became increasingly convinced that the perpetrator must still be an insider, so he immediately contacted Max and spoke in their childhood code language so that not a single person would suspect him.
He said, but I'd rather not catch fish. No one likes to fail than catch 20 fish alone.
Because Max forgot how to crack the code, he asked for help from one of his IT employees named Dana. After tinkering with the video recording according to the clues Max gave, finally the meaning of Jake's previous conversation was known, that the evidence of sabotage is at a high level of government, and Max was asked not to trust anyone.
Well, you said you were looking for action.
That's where Max just remembered the scientist's last message about a project named Zeus. After Dana checked Jake's database, it turned out to be an old project known only by a handful of people. However, to see the contents of the data, entry access was needed from people working in the White House.
I don't know anyone who does.
Yeah, you do.
Utilizing Sarah's account, it was finally known that Project Zeus contained hundreds of natural disaster simulations that Jake and the scientist formerly made to upgrade Dutch Boy. He deliberately conducted various disaster simulations that usually occur so that there wasn't a single gap that Dutch Boy couldn't handle.
Dana, can you show us just the simulation that begins in Afghanistan?
Yeah, sure.
Here it was also finally known that the anomalies occurring in Afghanistan and Hong Kong turned out to be still part of this Project Zeus simulation, so it was clear that someone, or the perpetrator, indeed deliberately used the Zeus scenario so that everything looked like ordinary natural disasters by making Dutch Boy their weapon.
Has weaponized Dutch Boy.
Accompanied by Dana to block communication signals, Max immediately told Jake about all his findings just now. Realizing if the virus had already spread and would continue the Zeus scenario automatically, Jake planned to reclaim Dutch Boy to delete all the viruses. However, because only the president's fingerprint and iris became the permission code, Max had to persuade him to understand the situation right now.
Let's go.
Transmission ended.
Before Max even went to meet Mr. President, all satellite communications suddenly died, making the station no longer able to control its satellites, followed by bad weather anomalies attacking several countries, such as a snowstorm, freezing almost the entire coast in Brazil, and an ice stone rain hitting the Tokyo region. Because they could no longer access the satellites, Jake asked all crew to immediately launch replacement satellites. So when the virus destroys the satellites one by one, causing various horrific disasters, the replacement satellites will collide with and forcibly shut down all the satellites that are already damaged.
Keep them coming!
They were shocked by a Geostorm warning, alias the peak of the Project Zeus scenario. Jake and Max's suspicion was correct about the perpetrator wanting to change Dutch Boy into a deadly weapon. A geostorm or geomagnetic storm is a mega devastating disaster when Dutch Boy triggers a solar storm, throwing highly charged particles directly to Earth, so that in less than 2 hours, various great disasters will immediately hit Earth.
If we lose the station...
Again, they were made to tremble when the station suddenly initiated an automatic self-destruction mode. Realizing if this mode could only be done manually by one person, namely Duncan, the operating systems expert, Jake went to the control center with Duncan, who was about to escape from there. He finally was honest that someone had paid him heavily to do all this, and suddenly... After Duncan died, Jake ordered all crew to board the shuttle to immediately leave the station. Because restarting Dutch Boy could only be done manually, there had to be one person staying at the station to activate the code, and that person is none other than Jake, who voluntarily would sacrifice himself.
Auf Wiedersehen, Jake.
After the last shuttle left, Jake rushed to the control room to repair everything, while Max himself was just about to meet the president to ask for his permission code. However, because currently Mr. President was busy carrying out a campaign for his second term in office, Max told everything to Decom and invited him to explain everything. The mastermind behind the Zeus project all this time turned out to be Decom himself. After escaping from Decom's shots just now, Max went to the stage to meet Sarah and immediately told everything. While Sarah would secure Mr. President, Max himself was asked to go to the parking lot and find a car for them to escape. Coinciding with a lightning storm starting to destroy the whole city, Mr. President had to face Decom's henchmen who kept shooting and pursuing. However, because Sarah is the best presidential bodyguard agent, she managed to escape and get out of the disaster zone. The car they were riding in was destroyed after Decom's men shot it with an RPG. However, what the two of them didn't know was that it was just a distraction, because Sarah secretly managed to hold him at gunpoint from behind. So now, Decom's career is finished. He will spend the rest of his life in prison. Here, Decom finally was honest that he was actually fed up with the president who always yielded to other countries. Decom was not willing if technology as sophisticated as Dutch Boy had to be given to other parties, so he started designing a plan in such a way to get rid of all countries, including the president, with Dutch Boy as his main weapon, and would leave America with Decom as the new leader. One problem solved, another problem appeared when Dutch Boy resumed the Zeus scenario with India and Arab countries becoming the next targets. While India was busy with a massive tornado destroying almost all regions, we are taken to the Arab country as a tsunami as high as 3,200 feet starts devouring desert areas and urban centers. With 5 minutes remaining until the Geostorm occurs, Max quickly brought Mr. President to the communication room to send his permission code. After the permission code was received, now it was Jake's turn to do his duty, which was reclaiming the Dutch Boy system without caring about the station which started self-destructing. And again, a new problem appeared when the pin to enter the control room turned out to be already changed. Briefly resigned because this was the only entrance, Jake was surprised by the appearance of Ute, who turned out not to have gone home and deliberately waited for Jake's arrival since earlier. So when the permission code was already executed, they finally succeeded in making the Dutch Boy system perform a reboot, including stopping the Geostorm disaster on time.
Status rebooting.
With the fact that the permission code could only reclaim and return all satellite control from the server on Earth without stopping its self-destruction mode, Jake again racked his brain to be able to save himself from the station storm which started to crumble. Using one satellite still parked intact at the base, they changed it into manual launch mode right when the station destruction entered the final stage. Luckily, Max and the Dutch Boy crew on Earth managed to catch the SOS signal from the satellite that Jake and Ute brought. While anxiously waiting for the evacuation team to arrive, they were surprised by the appearance of Hernandez's ship, which apparently hadn't returned to Earth, and immediately brought the two of them home in a safe condition. Coinciding with Dutch Boy recovering, we are also shown the disaster anomalies disappearing one by one. With the fact that Dutch Boy is too dangerous for the general public, the UN agreed to entrust it to America, including appointing Jake back as the main director to maintain its security. The message we can take from this film is sincere sacrifice never demands a return, but only hopes kindness grows from what is released. Sincere sacrifice teaches us that everything is no longer about possessing, but giving without counting. Remember, a heart willing to sacrifice is a heart that has won against its own ego. I am Jack, representing the Board of Directors on duty. Thank you and see you in the next video. Adios.